There we are. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name is Margaret Pinard. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author, and the purpose of today's live stream is a Sunday wrap up with 6 books. But before we get started, I just wanted to say I have a family member, my dad, who is in the hospital. He went in with COVID and apparently had a heart attack while he was in quarantine and getting treated. So I'm going to be traveling down to California this week and visiting with him, helping him recuperate, seeing what the news is. And I appreciate any good thoughts you can send our way. Just waft them over to Sacramento area. And I may not be very quick in responding to things this week, but I'll try to keep up with my commitments, including writer wind downs. But we'll see. We'll see. So, wind down tomorrow. Those are weekdays. Sunday, we have the wrap up. So, welcome to this August wrap up. I had one earlier that was 5 books, and this one will be 6. 6. So, I'm going to go backwards actually this time. So, yeah, a novel way of doing it. I've got notes all over the place. It's been a little crazy because I got back from a vacation last night at like 10 p.m. and now I'm trying to keep up with all this and also travel again tomorrow unexpectedly. So, like, the living room looks like a bomb went off. And so just bear with me while I try to find all the scattered pieces that I need to report out today. I took a picture of all my bookmarks for the first book, and I made an overlay. So, surprise pick for Margaret. This is going to be the first book I talk about. Yeah. So, yeah, you're confused with good reason. Let me find my notes. I've got all these pictures of sky. There we go. Okay, so this is one of the Libro.fm books that I saw as an ARC and an ARL, and went, that sounds interesting. And I figured, why not? I'll give it a try. It's called The Good Fight by Harry Garside. And number 1, it's Australian. So the first thing to know about this one is that this audiobook is narrated by an Australian, but you can understand it very easily, at least I could, and it's by an Australian. So it's by a guy named Harry Garside, who has got some amount of notoriety for being a boxer, and it released right around the Olympics time, and I went to look up how he performed in the Olympics, and I think he was out early in the rounds, but, like, he was at the Olympics, and he was also at the Tokyo Olympics, so pretty high level, but boxing. What do I know about boxing, right? He explains at the beginning of this book that it's not a memoir and it's not a self-help book, but it's sort of something in between where he's trying to share the lessons that he thinks are really important and that he wants to cling to in his life to stay authentic. The tagline is boxing, ballet, and breaking stereotypes. And the thing you might have heard about him for is as a boxer, he wore nail polish at the Olympics, or he's worn a designer skirt in a fashion show fundraiser or something like that. And part of his personality or part of his, I have a platform, this is what I'm going to use it for, raison d'etre, is to challenge stereotypes, especially with gender and what it's like to be a bloke, as he says in Australian, and just encourage people to be more well-rounded and explore why they think things the way they do and maybe, like, think more deeply about that, which is great, which is very timely. I did have he's like I think he was born in, like, 96 or 97, so he's, like, not even 30 or maybe 30, so he's pretty young to have a book out, but one of the things he goes over that was another reason he had some notoriety was that he was arrested at the airport, after coming back from a reality show, and it was for a domestic violence charge, but then the charges were dropped, and apparently it was some big drama, and he didn't go into the drama. He just went into, like, this was a major effect on me. This is how I got through it. These are the people who had faith in me. These are the ways that other people hurt me by not even asking or connecting. And that was really interesting. I had an initial reaction about, like, oh, am I listening to a abuser's memoir? Is that what this is? But I mean, he's presenting as such a person of, like, embracing feminine side and talking things out and trying to change the male masculinity culture and all that, that seems very far-fetched. Of course, it's only one side, but I don't know, maybe my Australian viewers can tell me what they thought, because I'd never heard of him before this, and maybe they got a more nuanced picture in the news than I did from listening to the memoir and doing a few Google searches. So very interesting, totally off the charts for me, like off the map, I should say, for me. If that sounds like an interesting read, you can use it for Straya September, which is the September readathon that is just coming up around the corner. So I forgot to go to the chat. Hi, chat. Good morrow, friends. Hello, Barrett Laurie. Hello, Anita. Welcome, welcome. Barrett says I look refreshed. I don't know. I don't know. I was up at 5:42 with a certain cat. So, relaxed Sunday. Cat Paws here. Hello, hello. I may need to listen to this one. It wasn't that long. It's only about 6 hours. So, I don't know. Comely Web Shop. Hello, welcome. And yes, there's a little Australian flag. So for some reason, Libro has Australian audiobooks and like a little clump for new releases. So Dira Yawara was Australian, which I really liked, historical fiction. And then this is like sort of more of a memoir self-help. And yeah, it's very like easy to listen to. And here, since I brought this up, I might as well use it. Reservoir of Childhood. Who will honor their commitments to me if I don't to myself? These are like the notes I took when I was listening to it. A statistic he brought up that I thought was surprising: 35 to 49-year-old men polled as more lonely than 65 and over. So I think that gets to like not having a close friend or not emoting or using traditionally feminine, although I don't like calling it that, avenues of expression and community building between men. So he was sort of calling that out, saying people should be allowed to do that, do what they need. If you keep telling someone who they are, believe it. For men. Oh. Yeah, if you keep telling someone who they are, they will believe it. So, yeah, this was getting at, like, media saturation and how we need to, like, change what the image is. And we were having some discussions about this, and not in terms of gender, but in terms of racism, and, like, that was an interesting discussion. So, he doesn't get into any of that in his book because that's not his story, but, it's what I maybe think of. One of the good questions towards the end was, what makes me happy enough that I'm willing to feel discouraged and, trounced when necessary? I thought that was a really thought-provoking question, because he was setting this up as you can only box for so long, amateur, professional, what have you, like, you've gotta have another career after, right? So what do I want to do? What will make me so happy to do that I'll be happy to fail in that as well? Because boxing, when he's been all in, has been highs and lows, and he's happy with it. So what else he's trying to think? And I thought that was a really good question. I don't know if I could answer that, um, you know, outside of writing. So if I couldn't write, I don't know, but that's an interesting question. And then the last one was something that I think I struggle with, which is trusting that what I'm feeling is a true response rather than a trained response. And the way I phrase this is how to tell if you're choosing the hard way, because he obviously advocates like challenging yourself and going the hard way by sticking to your routine. Is that the hard way? or staying comfortable with the familiar by sticking with a routine. So, for me, who doesn't like routines, is sticking to a routine the hard way because I don't like routines, or is it growing comfortable because I have grown to love the routine, and so then it's just sticking with something's familiar, and I need to challenge myself in a different way. Like, how do you know? Like, what? There's got to be a word for that, like a science, the study of vacillation and subjectivity. There's probably some like philosophical term for it. I don't know it. But anyway, thoughtful and yeah, good discussion questions. Tiffany's here, popping over from scripting the book. Yeah, I did pop in. I saw Nia and Natalie and Ben. So lovely. We've got a Leslie. Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Let's see. The next book I have is physical, so I can hold it up. It's one of a recent book haul. It's another Grace Burroughs book called How to Catch a Duke. And as you can tell, maybe from looking at it, it's a historical romance. This was one of a series. I've read some of the other character stories in this, which was really fun. The first book I read by Grace Burroughs was from Libro.fm, so they hooked me in, and now I've read maybe like 10. So Ned is in this book, and the family that he works with, one of the dukes, is here to find love. I really liked in this one the fact that they are treating someone with a disability. So we have disability rep and sort of traumatic childhood and the bonding that comes from that, but also the heartbreak that comes from that, and how you tunnel your way through that to love again, to trust again. So it's like a evergreen theme. I love that for historical romance. And great first line. I need you to kill me is the first line the heroine says to the hero. And the heroine is quite a gutsy miss. She's an inquiry agent and she's pretty tough and she's used to doing things on her own. So for having to have someone like that be matched up with a guy who has a cane, who has a disability, who sees himself a certain way, the dependence and independence uh, butting heads was a good conflict to last for the book. So quick read, great romance. And yeah, one of my favorite authors. She does, I wouldn't say pining, but like learning to trust trope very well. And then book number 3, we're going from romance to mystery. The mystery is an Iona Wishaw mystery, which is Pacific Northwest, but Canada. Make it Canada. Framed in Fire. And the series is named after the heroine, which is Lane Winslow, which sounds a lot like Iona Wishaw to me, which is pretty fun. These are chunky historical mysteries. They're set right after World War II, and they're set in Western Canada in an imaginary lakeside town that has, tough winters and is pretty rural. And there's a limited amount of cars back in the country and a limited number of policemen, and the station is an hour away from her house, and it's sort of like the isolated trope. But in this book, we've got a special treatment. We have someone who belongs to an indigenous tribe that has lands both in Canada and in the United States, and so we learn about someone who has gone from America to Canada to see where his ancestors were, and gets caught up in the murder that everyone is always caught up in a murder mystery. But we also learn about that way of life, as well as a resettled migrant group that was Russian. So they have an interesting interaction, or like they create an interesting discussion for our heroine, who sees both of their experiences and can compare it to the European treatment of Canadian land, and how different cultures can have vastly different views of the land and like what it means to them. So that was really interesting. I like that a lot. The murder mystery itself felt a little bit like another one of the ones I've read, where she gets caught in like a, not hold up, but like a standoff or whatever. and it's violent, and like people are cracking each other over the head, and there's a telephone that is open and the police are rushing, but it's like an hour away. So some of the elements were pretty similar, which is okay because the plot itself was pretty different. But just feeling that in the back of my head, I was like, oh, it's just like the other one where they were at the school instead of the gas station. And um, but yeah. So well written, simply written, lots of fun neighborly asides and setting detail of history as well as cultures within Canada, which I appreciated, and humor. We also get later in the series the relationship, the like love story, and the harder adjustments to being in a relationship from being so independent. So, kind of like the romance is an interesting theme and one that I really vibe with. So, definitely recommend Iona Wishaw, Pacific Northwest author. And the reason she writes about a woman who used to be a spy who now settled in Canada after the World War II is that that was her mom's story, which is pretty cool. Let's see. Tiffany says, I've seen Grace Burrows, but I've never read her. Yeah, she's one of my favorites. Like the two, I won't say auto buy, but like I definitely check out Mimi Matthews and Grace Burrows. But it's WES. Like she says in her bio, I should have chosen a pen name that had one spelling only, but there's so many ways to spell Burrows, so people have a hard time finding her. But yeah, I will put it in the description below. Speaking of which, I will be putting all the books I'm talking about today down in the description with links so you can support the channel if you want to buy one of them after we conclude the live stream. So you'll always be able to find the titles that I'm talking about. Also, I'm doing some changes with my Patreon, providing some different benefits, experimenting with another platform. So I would recommend if you want to be able to follow me for free on Patreon and get like the new thing, I'll have a week in the beginning of September where the people who are following for free get the new thing, whatever that is. You'll find out in the first week of September. And so you can do that any old time, and I will conveniently provide the link to check out my Patreon in the chat. Okay, so book 4. Yes, book 4. That's a cool mom. Yeah, Super Spy, Incognito. Book 4 is one of the ones that I picked up specifically for a reading challenge. This is maybe up Ben Pick's alley, actually. It's called So You Want to Be a Wizard. It definitely gave me the vibes of his series, but this is one from the 80s by Diane Duane, and this is a result of me walking into Spoke and Word bookstore in Milwaukee near Portland, not the big one, and tasking the owner and the employee that were there with finding a series that had 4 books that I had not yet started that was finished, because that is one of the Herkyed challenges or prompts. So Herkyed, once again, if you don't know, hardest reading challenge you've ever done, HRCYED. And that is run by QWordy, Stephanie's channel, and focuses on LGBTQ books and indie author books. So I needed to find a series that I wanted to read that I hadn't started yet, which is actually pretty hard. But this one fit the bill, and I really enjoyed it. So You Want to Be a Wizard. They basically explained it as it's like Harry Potter before Harry Potter. So instead of London, as you can probably tell, it's over New York City. And it's these 2 kids who meet up when they're trying to find out how to be wizards to improve their middle school life, basically. And I don't know if this is something I don't remember from books I read as a kid, or if times have just changed, or both. But our main character, Nita, is running away from getting beaten up, and she gets like beaten up twice a week, like punched in the face, black eye. And I'm like, that's a lot. That's pretty physical. Like I never saw kids get beaten up like that. But bullying trigger warnings, I suppose. But she sort of deals with it in her own way and then becomes a wizard and then makes a friend. whose name I don't remember right now because I tore through this book. But and then they go off on a jolly adventure, which is sort of like a test of their wizarding merit. And it's a happy ending. There are 3 more books. Um, but I liked what they were tested in and like the cool fantasy elements and the other worlds they went through and the people they met that were like wizards incognito, and it had a lot in common with Harry Potter and portal fantasies in general. So I really liked her action and characters and story elements and would recommend this to people growing up today. Middle grade, and 4 books, and it's finished. So there you go. Let's see. I will be continuing on with the next book in the series for my Her Kid challenge. Yeah, new stuff, that's exciting. I know. And I was just thinking, like, how am I gonna record things? It's gonna be interesting this week, but we'll see. Yeah, bullying at a big level. Yeah, I was like, did Boxcar Children have like kids getting beat up in the face? Like, that just seems so graphic, but maybe it didn't. I don't remember. I don't know. I probably didn't read this because I wasn't yet born in the 80s. Oh my gosh. Okay. 2 more books. So, oh, and I didn't get the overview. Sorry, overlay. Let's see. Hold on. One moment. Canva. Let's see. This is such a good one. Nope. I hate when I hit a sponsored link. It means someone's getting money for doing nothing. Somebody, meaning Amazon or Google, because it's just a link on Google results. Can I not? No, I can't. Okay. There we go. All right. Come on. It's so good. This is my highest rated one of the 2 weeks, so it's worth the wait to get the graphic. I'm just saying. This will be my last one. In the meantime, here's my second to last book. So this is Sugar in the Blood, which is what inspired the title. And Sugar in the Blood is by Andrea Stewart, a family story of slavery and empire. So I was just discussing a little bit of like what sugar was making me feel guilty about. The abolitionist activists in the 19th century, specifically ladies, organized to protest and boycott sugar because it was being harvested and processed by slaves in the West Indian colonies. And oh man, if I had the willpower to boycott sugar, but I don't know if anyone in America could do that cold turkey. Anyway, Sugar in the Blood is Andrea Stewart's exploration of her family. So if you've heard me talk about Mr. Atkinson's rum contract, it's similar but different. So let's see if I can take a piece of the bio. It's rather lengthy. Andrea Stewart was born and raised in the Caribbean, studied English at the University of East Anglia and French at the Sorbonne. So we have that in common. And she writes freelances, writes for anthologies, etc. So I think this is sort of a one-off. This is from a while ago. It's not a new book. But this is her exploring her Barbados roots. So Barbados was a British colony and had their reputation of being the earliest and the, like, I don't know, maybe kinda like Georgia is in the southern states, like, the most refined because they'd been there the longest, and so they were looking down on the other colonies in the West Indies. Um, but so they were making people rich early on with the slave trade and the sugar plantations. But then the industry shifted, and revolts and rebellions changed the economics, and abolition started to be entertained seriously, and all these types of things. So what she did is go back to look at the economic situation of the farthest back forebear she could find who went to Barbados. What was that like? What was it like being not a second son, but a common person to just set off sail into the ocean and land on an island and hack a living out of the earth when there was no one there. Barbados was unique in that there were no natives um, still on the island for whatever reason when they got there. So it was easier to conquer. And that didn't mean that it was easy to make a living, though, because very different from any British person's experience being in the Caribbean and trying to grow food and everything, and survive hurricanes, for example. So she does a lot of the 1600s history and goes into research about how many people died in which hurricane and how long it took for them to go from nameless nobody to getting their first 30 acres, and then the intermarriages, and then all that kind of stuff. So it was interesting. That didn't really have much bearing on my book. So when I was reading this for research, it was like I was trying to skim and like get to the part around abolition that I was more interested in. Uh, it was very short, the part that I was, like, looking for, um, and there's a bit on, like, the liberty fights and, the independence, but pretty quick, and then she gets into the part that is, people within her memory, like her parents and grandparents, and then it got more interesting again, um, and a little bit more personal, but for the most part, like 85-90% of this book is, like, professional history. So, an interesting dip into a period that is not my historical period, but fed into it for sure. And yeah, makes you think differently about sugar. So, um, I've got lots of bookmarks in there I need to list up. Okay. And my final book is another audiobook that I needed to make the overlay for. Um, Bing. This is another Libro.fm new release that I chose for Herkyed. This is the August new release, Read in August. And it was also my first T. Kingfisher book. So I had seen T. Kingfisher, but I was getting that name mixed up with TJ Klune, I think. They're not very similar vibes, but they're both T's and they're both in the sci-fi fantasy space. And so I was like, which one is which? This is A Sorceress Comes to Call, and I love the cover. It's an adaptation of the Goose Girl fable, which I haven't read, so I need to find, like, the classic version because the prompt this satisfies is read a classic and its adaptation. So I read the adaptation first, and it's gonna have a hard time the classic is gonna have a hard time measuring up because this was fabulous. So, I also can count it for the horror genre because most of it I was reading through, I was, like, wanting to know what was gonna happen. The 2 narrators who did 2 POVs of heroines because there were like 2 main protagonists and 1 main antagonist. Um, they were very good, very different, and it was kind of interesting to hear them voice each other's characters' voices as well. Um, but I went through most of the book thinking it's fantasy. Okay, it's fantasy. It's classic retelling of a fable. And then it got to a point where I guess that's like the 3rd act or something, and something happened, no spoilers, and I was like, "Oh, no, this is horror. No, I'm gonna call this horror," like, so if that is a content warning for you, it's horror, but it didn't turn me off. By the time I got there in the story, it made a lot of sense, and it was like, "Ooh," like, "Oh, that's so good," like, kinda getting slimed on Nickelodeon. Not a desirable thing ever, but like when it fits, it fits. So that's where I would put this novel. If you don't know the Goose Girl fable, like I did not, A Sorceress Comes to Call is about a daughter who grows up with an abusive mother. So there's a trigger warning. Um, and there's magic involved in this sort of alternate world that's like somewhere in the northeastern America of a different universe. And the mother is a little like, she's like channeling Mother Knows Best from Tangled. So there you go. There's a good archetype to pull in your imagination. But she's trying to find a sugar daddy. And so she's got this whole plan and she's putting it in motion. And the daughter's like, what is this outside world? I've only ever lived in this small village and had this controlling mother. So we get like a coming of age on the part of the one heroine. And on the other side, the other narrator portrays the sister of the targeted sugar daddy. And she's like, something's not right here. And so she's reasoning through like how not to have her brother be like in this person's clause, and then other people get involved, and like it's very well orchestrated. It's just all the characters play a part, and they're all like, they've got their funny points and they've got their brave moments, and I just really really liked this. I couldn't wait to get through to the end. It was like really suspenseful at the end. So good stuff. Good stuff. And like unique magic things. So if you're like, oh, I've always seen the same things, the magic tropes, whatever, I thought there were some cool, unique twists on fantasy magic that were put into play here, which is cool. No, people didn't get beat up in the face. Fights happened, but more wrestling and boxcar children. Oh, okay. Thank you. This was the book. Yay! So the Goose Girl. So I think I got that confused with the girl who had to knit sweaters out of nettles for her brothers, or else they would remain swans because they'd been turned into swans. Swans are not geese, everybody. Just PSA there. So I will have to go find an edition of the Goose Girl because I have no idea what the original will be like. But yeah, excellent. T. Kingfisher, big fan. I'm assuming this would be a good one for like a Halloween or a spooky read. And maybe, I believe T. Kingfisher is a woman. Ursula V is the tag on Twitter, I think. And I look forward to seeing her other works because maybe she's got the similar vibe, or maybe she's got like different speeds or tones, and like that would be neat to discover. So that is my 6th book finale, my wrap up for today. The 6 Swans. Okay. See, Anita knows. The Nettle shirt story. I think this was in my mind so well because I saw a cartoon of it when I was a kid, so it like made an impression. Nettles. I didn't know what nettles were when I was a kid. We don't have those in California that I know of. So yeah, it was like all foreign, but the cartoon was really cool. So yeah. All right. So that is it for the books today. And I wanted to remind folks 2 things that were outstanding. I will try to send out the giveaways. I had the bookish care packages from my anniversary stream last Sunday, and I got the addresses today, and so I will be sending those out, probably from California. I just did most of the wrapping. I'm almost finished with the wrapping of stuff today, so those should be on their way in the next week. And then our final week for the writer wind downs is this week. So again, I will be trying to make them all around going to see my dad, and the next one will be with Brie Bonomo, who is a fellow Stygian author, and it will be tomorrow, Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to join in and hear Brie's tips, because she was actually very excited when I asked her if she wanted to do this, and said she had crafted a very specific routine after lots of experimentation. So if you are curious about a wind down routine, if you have tips and you want to share or you want tips, you got to be there. This is our last week. And so I'd love to see you tomorrow, Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And Bree will be joining me. I will also have a few other guests throughout the week. So I believe Tuesday, I don't have a time. So I'll be 7 p.m. Pacific, my default. Wednesday, I don't have a time, but I'm not sure if Dee will be joining me. Dee, Brown? No, that's a different D. Something with a B. Okay, I'll have to get in touch with her again because she was unsure when I asked her. Thursday, we'll have Leslie on the channel for a writer wind down. And then Friday, we'll be closing the month with Morgan Lee. So, big week, busy week, and I appreciate you tuning in. Friday is also supposed to be a final Friday productivity sprint. So we'll see. We'll see what we get to. But it was a good couple weeks for reading. The average was 4.125 stars. I just did that because I'm a dork. But that's pretty good. So, reading challenges and research and history and romance and mystery and boxing. Who knew? So thanks for coming by. I will see you on Monday for a writer wind down, Wednesday for a regular stream, or Friday for a productivity sprint. And again, just appreciate you keeping my family in your thoughts. If you can, waft that good vibe energy over California way. And thanks so much, everybody. Oh, Six Swan Steampunk sequel. So I know that story. That would explain why. Okay, cool. If you have a link, you can pop it in the chat. And Tiffany says, those sound so great as guests. Yes. So glad to see some excitement, and we'll see you again soon. Take care and happy reading, everybody. Bye.